I recorded because this is going to be a special thing. But that's the first person who has requested that song or whatnot. So this makes it truly unique. So
I'm old school, you know.
Well, that is something. It's really the best school, honestly. And this is right in the middle of the supposedly new school, even though I'm probably old now at 33, considering this next wave. So
things move quickly.
They sure do in these times. They sure do, great sir. If you can repeat that great song again, good sir.
Oliver Nelson, and the song is called "Stolen Moments."
All right, so let's get into this right here. Wow, this is one where even with my Rolodex, well, Oliver Nelson, this is, yes. I should know this. I mean, my father and my parents, they definitely were James Brown Motown era. You know?
No, I'm all of that, but I just always loved this particular piece of music.
So this is a great intro for this tremendous sir. So this is where we'll start off officially overall and get this whole wonderful interview going, because this is a tremendous thing. And I'm gonna try to upload it on YouTube as quick as possible, where it's probably better that we do this here than Twitter. I wouldn't have this on Twitter live stream now, but unfortunately all the nonsense on Twitter, it's just a thing that's crazy, you know. So I'll start it right now in about 10 seconds, and I'll just get into the whole mode and whatnot. And you know, this beginning part will probably be added to. It's so great. It's so natural. So So hello everyone. How are you all doing? I'm Andrew Jones, aka Sluggah Jells here. Andrew Jerell Jones, Sluggah Jells, with another great whole delivery interview and a special interview with the tremendous William Stanley Darity, right here, the great professor from Duke University, and his great song Oliver Nelson's Stolen Moments as the intro song. The first person that can say that, and probably the only person that will select this great song. Professor Darity, great to have you here. How are you doing, great sir?
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, I am so excited to really talk to you, to the point where I'm kind of glad that you don't have Instagram, where people can really see this interview first on YouTube and other platforms later on. And the reason why I want to interview you is because we had followed each other for probably about, I say, 3 or 4 years now. And I first got notice of you overall, as in many people, through Ta-Nehisi Coates' article, through Reparations overall, but even more so through you being Bomani Jones's favorite professor. ESPN's Bomani Jones is the wonderful cultural person who also is a distant Jones, though not related closely. Who have actually, I got to tell you, Professor Darity, he blocked me 10 years ago, even though we definitely know each other, during the World Cup, because I had to, as I cover soccer, his takes on African teams, especially specifically in regards to seeing African teams only have white coaches, I thought was not seeing the full picture of the situation.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, he definitely made a great point about the overall white, systematic privilege about that, and some African nations, or predominantly a lot of them, having white European coaches, and he didn't know sometimes some of them were retread coaches overall. Yeah. But it was also something where I just felt that he overall didn't understand that, some of the nations, in terms of even towards a great country like Nigeria, to want to go to that next level and really be among like the world's elite, like how Brazil is, along with predominantly other white nations, Argentina included in that, and of course in Europe, that it was something where it was just the structure of how Europeans like train with soccer and the whole discipline overall, and just like probably introducing new like ideas or whatnot to a lot of players or whatnot, or just a different perspective, is something that he didn't know because he didn't cover soccer fully. So he didn't want to,
but it's interesting though that you mentioned that, because I'm thinking of the some of the South American countries that facially seem to be very white. Mm-hmm. Like I describe Chile as the whitest non-white country I've ever been in. But somehow on their football sides, they seem to find every black athlete who's a citizen of their country.
They do, except Argentina, who
Yeah.
Argentina, they keep it consistent all the way. I gotta give Argentina that credit. But yeah, I mean Chile does. Thankfully, Uruguay with their wonderful, so well, at least at the time before their great last main leader left or whatnot, their great, really socially driven system, overall, in a country I think is truly underrated globally in terms of, say, a lot of white leftists here in America, as I would say, in terms of coverage overall. But I just got through Bomani Jones' like knowledge of you, and it was just something where it was so fascinating, where your demeanor on Twitter is truly as exemplary as anybody else's. Where I mean, you make Paul Krugman seem like he's Michael Rappaport, because I've never seen you curse at anybody online. And this is something that especially is relevant now when, I have this whole issue with a former favorite artist of mine, and then someone who's a Bed-Stuy native like me, and someone who's met me twice in Talib Kweli, actually, and how that's been a very vocal thing about that. So
that's been really disappointing to me, because I loved his music. The album where he has that satirical bit about chilling out in South Africa, where he's trying to sound like Mandela. Fabulous album.
Quality, but both Quality and The Beautiful Struggle and all of his albums before. I mean, he truly is, as Jay-Z said, one of the few rappers. He said, "If the skills he chose, truthfully, I be Talib Kweli." And Jay-Z doesn't say that about many artists. And of course, it's fitting that Jay-Z and Talib Kweli are from the Bed-Stuy part of Brooklyn, as am I, overall. But great sir, it's something where that was the main impetus where I said, I really have to interview this tremendous person. And I don't mean just to say that interviewing right now. I truly do mean that objectively. And the reason why I say that is because I truly do feel, we'll get into more of this later on, but I truly do feel like you're really the economist that America really does need, especially right now.
Wow, that's like really super generous. Thank you.
Yeah. So before we just get into your whole, history and how you become at Duke and become this, prominent enough professor, I wanted just to ask you just in terms of your thoughts on just the overall climate, of this country overall, and just how you feel, in terms of seeing COVID-19, attack the Black community predominantly. Then of course these protests would not have even occurred if it wasn't for the 17-year-old girl, Danielle Frazier, filming George Floyd, and people have forgotten about this wonderful, brave teenage girl who's certainly been traumatized by this whole thing, and she's indicated by it. But we wouldn't have gotten that because we didn't have any vocal marches for Breonna Taylor or Ahmaud Arbery. So what's your thoughts, Professor, about this climate?
Well, it's an interesting question as to why the murder of George Floyd in particular has had such a resonance. Maybe it's because it was so graphic and so blatant, although we have seen visuals of other people being murdered by the police, particularly Black men. So I'm not sure precisely what was the trigger in this moment. It might be the fact that people were, more highly sequestered as a consequence of the coronavirus. But this type of anti-Black police violence has been going on, from time immemorial. So it is a really interesting question as to what it was about this particular moment that triggered such a strong reaction and response, not just in the United States, but globally. And I'm hoping that the way in which people's eyes have been opened about anti-Black police violence will extend to their understanding of the extent to which the society operates as a white supremacist machine, and will lead people to finally say, we need to change the way America functions.
And one of those main aspects of attacking systematic racism, because blatant racism has been easy to do, and I'll get into that in terms of that whole discussion in regards to the whole abolish police thing, when I'm having white people from Oregon thinking that they think that they're more black than me. Oh, not that literally did occur at least a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, Professor Darity. But the main thing that I see, and the main thing that I felt that maybe was the thing that cost Bernie Sanders in the end, and I'll get into that about the primary overall with him and Joe Biden specifically, was the fact that he, despite his growth in terms of being open to talking reparations, and he really was actually beginning in 2016 after he was asked that by my colleague Nana Villa about reparations and how he just thought it wasn't realistic. And then Ta-Nehisi Coates went at him at the article. And then I went at Ta-Nehisi Coates saying that, well, where was this when you could have had Obama, Ta-Nehisi, and why is he why are you holding him to this standard or whatnot? This white man overall who's just seeing the polls and he's seeing 9% of the country supported, and if the black president is not supporting it, if you're not hearing this regularly, if the centrist black president is not supporting it, you're not hearing this regularly on air, and you're not seeing this on BET or talked about in rap music overall, or at least at a mainstream level, then how could you hold him accountable? But I felt this time that even with the great Professor Hamilton, who is near and dear to you overall, whatnot, and part of his team, and him still being open to the panel or the John Connors panel, the study, the whole study and everything about it. That it still was something that was like lacking, especially when it came to when he could have won the nomination in South Carolina if he had a plan that was realistic and not Marlene Williamson's plan, as you call feeble in terms of, or paltry, as you said in regards to her plan. But she was the only one that I could remember from the Democratic primary that had at least a price tag on it or whatnot. So
she's the only one. The only other person that I'm aware of that explicitly endorsed reparations, but without any details, was Julian Castro.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right.
Everybody else, if they said something favorable in that direction, it was about their endorsement of HR 40, which is the legislation for the study commission. Yeah. But yeah, no, and I think I'm not always as disciplined as you were crediting me with, because the other day I had an interview in which I actually said that I thought that Barack Obama was a coward. And
hey, I feel you. I'm right here. That's self-discipline. That's better than.
Well, I didn't curse him out, but I did say that. And I think your point is well taken. That there is a contradiction in holding white candidates to an expectation of a commitment for reparations if you did not hold Barack Obama to the same expectation. Now, I did. I mean, I said that's what he should be doing. He should have the courage to do that, and he didn't. But I feel like I've got open season on all of the candidates because I did hold him to that standard.
Yes, you did, and that's why I feel that you're so underrated in this country, because we'll talk about notable economists that you respect and all that, but you truly, and it just helps being black, like to really really focus in on that, and how this country owes us like a debt overall, or especially those who truly had like descendants overall of slaves overall, that. And I felt that if this is a moment of true systematic racism, one of the few things that I thought in my head, and I still have to, once I'm able to tweet again on Front Street, on Monday or sooner, if I'm able to do this, maybe piece at the New York Times or whatnot, this op-ed, holding Twitter accountable. One of the like at least 10 or 11 points that I said, in order for us to really have full racial solidarity, like really end or attack systematic racism the best in this country, one of them obviously was paying the debt overall to Black people. And I felt that, because you and Professor Hamilton have said $3 trillion overall. I've been like, give it $4 trillion, especially after COVID-19 and everything.
Well, actually, in my book with Kirsten Mullen, we've made some adjustments in those numbers, and we now say that the minimum should be $10 to $12 trillion, because that's what would be required to eliminate racial differences in wealth in the United States.
Here to that, ladies and gentlemen. That's why you got to get.
Well, Bob Johnson, I'm not sure how he cooked this number, but Bob Johnson says should be 14 trillion. And my attitude is, if you can give me a higher number, I'm all for it.
I'm all for it. I am all for it all the way. DNA Instant 23 DNA, sign me up. This is why Henry Louis Gates needs to hit you up automatic. But we'll talk about that all the way, because it's something where I just feel that you guys are preeminent right there. No one's talking about this overall for any economist overall, at least at the depth of your level. And I just still feel I already get this pushback still on Twitter from white leftists or, Democratic socialists who are, and I'm a very Democratic socialist. And for people who don't know, I've said it at least on Twitter already a few times in a few interviews, but I advised Bernie Sanders the last 2 weeks of his campaign when I saw after Super Tuesday 2 in the Michigan, Missouri, Mississippi results and the Washington result that there was just a clear disadvantage in regards to how Joe Biden was getting covered by centrist media. And it just was from South Carolina.
To what extent do you think that that Black South Carolina does in fact pay great attention to Jim Clyburn?
Well, I think he's a massive factor because of how he's truly, of the community. He's a guy that for his constituents there in the state that borders you, because North Carolina is definitely different than South Carolina. Like I tell people, there's more common with Virginia and North Carolina than there is North Carolina and South Carolina.
South Carolina, yeah.
And that's having family now in all three of those states. And it's been fascinating to really analyze that this year. But it's something where they truly have Jim Clyburn represent them from his days, him and John Lewis, all the way going back, despite taking all the big pharma money, and something that, Professor West has said, he's called them out on that. Big times. Cornell has certainly called them out on that. And called them out on that.
And Clyburn has undercut the reparations effort as well.
Yes, the 2030.
Yeah. Although he did give us this great phrase, because at some point he was saying, you will never have, and he called it pure reparations. And so since then, there's been a hashtag pure reparations on Twitter.
Wait a minute. I thought ADOS was enough.
No, there's hashtag ADOS, there's hashtag pure reparations also.
Oh my goodness, Black people, we gotta be unified now. Let's take one. Let's stay with the ADOS. Stay with the ADOS. It's pure reparations trying to appropriate the ADOS. Just like people who feel on Twitter that Black Lives Matter got appropriated more by other people overall. But it's just something with Representative Clyburn, he probably feels jaded, him working the system with John Lewis, where he probably said to himself, there's still a lot of white people, and there's still a lot of people that vote Republican, and that Republicans still exist despite how they are a crazy party that only caters to rich people, predominantly rich white people, and they're able to still they're able to first to depress people from voting along with centrist media, to really depress people, and also centrist Democrats, to try to weed out as much of enthusiasm for voting, and since the Spiro Agnew days, and this is something that I had to see. Even BU didn't, even Boston University didn't really drill this into me at all like that, honestly, or at least like the political science classes I took. They could have, but it wouldn't have been as passionate as it was if I didn't start reading Daily Kos in my junior year of college in 2008, when the '08 primary was really going on, seeing Obama and Hillary. And I just said to myself, well, CNN and MSNBC outside of Keith Olbermann, and maybe when Rachel Maddow was emerging, these channels aren't representing the people. Like, these channels are why are they trying to false equivocate? I'm tired of this false equivocation that's happening in the Bush administration, or the Cheney administration. The Cheney administration, as a teenager growing up, you're so disillusioned with like seeing so many Republican voices on TV, Republican white men on all over the place, and how I had like an animus towards Joe Scarborough for so long or whatnot before now fully appreciate him to the point where I really want to interview him, honestly. But it's something where you just had that coverage seep in all the way. And if it wasn't for the likes of Daily Kos and then me working at Talking Points Memo and a lot of liberal blogs, that I wouldn't have really gotten that passion to say, well, why do I say anti-Republican more than I say, I'm a Democratic voter? Or like, why did I just say, like, was it ingrained from 92 on to be Bill Clinton, and then, whoever is a Democrat, there's no Republican ever for Black people. So, or for the 92% of Black people.
I think it's partially because, well, maybe not even partially, but it's because the Republican Party has trafficked so openly in racism.
Yeah.
Which is not to say that there's no racism in the Democratic Party, but the Republican Party has been blatant. Even their dog whistles really are pretty blatant. So I think that's the reason. It might be a different world if the Republican Party somehow had crafted a conservatism that was not laced with white supremacy, but that's not what they did.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, and it's just something where they've doubled down and tripled down on it in such ways. And now you see, I mean, with the police reform bill overall, or Tim Scott's, and I'm just going to keep it real, Professor Darity. I tell anyone that supports Republicans, I say that they're Uncle Toms. And I make sure I disclaim, only Black people can say that. So for anybody watching, again, as I reiterate all the time, including my non-Black leftist or rationalist, as I like to call it rationalist, because leftist can be a little too ambiguous at times and not that warmly received. But for all those non-centrists going towards the left sphere, online media or in general, or if you're out in the streets or whatnot, if you are not Black, please do not call any Black Republican an Uncle Tom. It is not helping the purpose. What you can do, or even a sellout, what you can do is say is that they are a Republican who's a very problematic person economically, and just is someone that truly doesn't care for working class or the proletariat. But like, it's just something that you see that right there with Tim Scott being a willing puppet to Mitch McTurtle McConnell, and and just doing that to the point where he didn't talk to Kamala Harris or Cory Booker about his whole plan, and then they can't stand it, especially Kamala. She's not here for any nonsense or whatnot. She really is not. So, just you seeing that literally, being North Carolina, and despite being on Durham's campus with a lot of privileged like Duke kids coming from New Jersey, and overall, do you feel that generation, or at least which is really my generation, honestly, do you feel that they are open to say, you know what, we need to know our history and be okay with reparations plan? Because I've already gotten pushback, Professor Darity, where they said, oh, the corporations should pay for it, or like, why are you dividing? Even in this era of listening to Black people, or like needing to listen to Black people, reasonable Black people, I still get that pushback on Twitter right
now. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, one thing that I keep pointing out is that there has actually been a change in attitudes towards reparations for Black American descendants of U.S. slavery. In 2000, in the year 2000, Ravana Popoff and Michael Dawson at the University of Chicago did a survey in which they interrogated attitudes of Americans about reparations. One facet was asking people about their attitudes towards reparations for Japanese Americans for unjust incarceration during World War II. I don't think they worded it exactly like that, but what became apparent was most people didn't realize that reparations had already been paid to Japanese Americans. And there was a high degree of opposition, but there was no opposition level that was comparable to white opposition to reparations for Black Americans. So 96% of the white respondents were opposed to reparations for Black Americans. Today, actually, the number is closer to 80 to 85%.
Progress.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you think about it, you know, from 4% yes to closer to 20% yes, that's a big change. But you were asking about, you know, the younger generation, the younger adult generation. And what appears to be true is that the millennials actually are far more in favor of reparations than their parents and grandparents. That it's close to half of millennials who say that they're in favor of reparations. Now, I'm not sure, you know, they always say people become more hidebound and conservative in outlook as they age. So I'm not sure if this will carry over as millennials grow older, but I think it's a very striking change in terms of generational attitudes towards reparations, and somewhat promising.
Well, for me, I have to say I'm I'm really not all the way in terms of that hopeful about that, to be honest with you.
Okay.
You know, I feel like I'm the old person now. You're like the young, like optimistic person, because I feel like I feel like it's definitely the okay to say reparations, but that whole pushback of corporate, and then a lot of them not wanting to adhere to the price overall, and already taken aback by me me simply saying 4 trillion, and I'm underselling myself.
Yeah.
That was like, you know, when y'all had the piece when the New York Times, I don't know if it was Astrid Wiley or whoever talked to you at the New York Times about that, you and Professor Hamilton, but they were already taken aback by the trillions, by just the simple trillions.
Yeah.
And I feel that that's, you know, it's to me, I'm all about, I need to see the proof, you know, whether it's like anyone that's media organizations, progressive media organizations saying that, you know, they're all about covering, you know, Black issues, but barely have Black people a part of their site, including the Intercept, which I was the first Black reporter there, only to have a lot of racism happen to me, which was pretty crazy. I got to tell you, that whole experience. But it's just something that you see. I need to see the tangible proof and the actual proof of really walking the walk when you talk the talk on this. And frankly, I just don't see that overall in regards to just even the urgency of placing it. Like Medicare for all, tremendous thing that we should have, but that to me is the urgent thing in holding the rich really accountable for, you know, having their taxes slashed again by conservative craziness, this time a reality TV show clown. But you know, it's just something that, though, the sense of urgency for me, or not a sense of urgency, the willingness to me still is still very hostile towards that for my generation, where again, this comes back to where the history thing, and why I'm grateful for you and or Professor West or Eddie Glaude doing this thing on Morning Joe and turning them almost to his whole classroom session in regards to, you know, bringing back James Baldwin to real focus, you know, overall, is that I just don't see that true level of saying himself, I want to really attack this white supremacy, or for me, this anti-Black supremacy, because you'll have a lot of other races who aren't white, but still, you know, think that we're being too pro-Black about things, or feeling that we obsess about the N-word in rap songs too much in terms of who can say it and they can't say it. It's just a whole level of, to me, barrier still for me to be fully like, I'm really hopeful this is gonna be like, a wonderful process of change after the tragedy that we saw with George Floyd.
Yeah, so I'm generally pretty cynical and a pessimist, and I got on the. I started pursuing advocacy and research for reparations about 30 years ago, despite the fact that I realized that the odds of it actually happening were extremely low. And in fact, I initially was not going to pursue reparations at all because I thought the odds of it happening were so very low. But I ultimately began to think that if you were in the United States in 1817, you probably would think that slavery might never come to an end. But that would not be a justification for not trying to fight against it.
Yeah.
If you were in South Africa in 1957, you might think apartheid will never come to an end. But again, that would not be a justification for not fighting against it. So in this case, I'm fighting for something, for restitution for Black American descendants of US slavery. And I have no idea if it will actually happen. I'm somewhat pessimistic about it ever happening in my lifetime because I'm pretty old. But I'm still
looking sharp, still looking young and spry.
I'm an old Negro. But I'm still going to pursue it. Now, what I will say that does give me a measure of optimism is the fact that the responses and pushback that you're getting now is not about whether or not reparations is an ethical or a moral imperative. It's more about, I've got all these concerns about the logistics, how much it would cost, who's going to pay for it. I shouldn't personally have to pay for it, and so on. Well, we do have the capacity to answer those questions, and if they are questions that are asked in good faith, which they might not be, people may actually listen to the responses and be persuaded. But there's a lot that we have to unpackage, including people's beliefs that the way this would be paid for is by taking dollars out of their pockets. The white people's belief that this would be paid for by taking dollars out of their pockets and putting it in Black people's pockets. And that's not how government finances are conducted.
At all. It's just a lack of informing people, which has been a prominent problem with this country, and honestly informing people. And it's something where if they just watch Henry Louis Gates' show, because I always said to myself, like, okay, how will we do the ancestry thing? And then once I see his show, it's like, oh, problem solved now. Now there's definitely no more excuses that should,
Yeah, but it's the genealogical research. It's not the DNA testing that's going to be of much utility to us here. The DNA testing can demonstrate that perhaps in some rough way that you may have African ancestry. And that you may have African ancestry from some specific location, although that's problematic. But it cannot establish that you have an ancestor who was enslaved in the United States. We don't have the bones for everybody, right? So what really is needed is old-fashioned, homely genealogical research. And in our book, in the final chapter where Kirsten and I detail a program of reparations, we actually propose that the federal government make that a service that's available to all individuals who are trying to make claims for reparations, that they actually can get free of cost genealogical research done on their own behalf by the federal government.
I should have asked you beforehand if you had your book on hand, if you was able to, put it up
Yeah,
or whatnot, you know.
I've got it nearby.
Okay, yeah, for people that they want to see it, they can get it overall, you know, because I highly recommend buying this book, including myself or
Yeah.
whatnot. Where if seeing that in Eddie Glau's book, certainly I will be getting that overall. And I barely have time for books, honestly, because of just how news is constant and a lot of, you know, books, especially a lot of, unfortunately, I mean, with our history overall, but you know, we don't get the full perspective on things, and from a lot of smart people, or supposedly smart people like John Meacham, who wants to, you know, always cater and whitewash some things and whatnot and everything. It's just really been problematic in regards to just our full knowledge of history. Where if we had full, honest knowledge of history, we would have people truly understand why we need reparations for Black descendants of slavery and not have any 8% polling or 17% polling now. And I mean, it would be very problematic if it was just Democratic Party or voters and you saw the breakdown of that. Oh my goodness. So, you know, I want to ask you, Professor, first before we get into more current topics, how, you know, your whole career, where you're at right now, and how, you know, it's something where it's so great to see you be at just one university, and it's something where being a professor and seeing friends now go through it, including one friend who, you know, being a Black male Harvard professor teaching math is something like something of this whole another thing, and not tenure.
What we call him, a unicorn? Yeah.
Yeah, he is a unique one. Sometimes I have to get on him in terms of time overall with his friends, but when he watches back, he knows, you know, I always mean well for him. So, but it's something where you had a, you know, career, especially after how, you know, great your whole journey of how your parents raised you overall, and how you definitely have been through the whole academic, you know, going to so many different colleges overall, and being able to do that. So, you know, when you graduated, you know, from Brown, and this is what your father, for people who don't know, you know, his father was trustee at Chapel Hill, Tar Heels away. So I know it must be something if he's up above right now in terms of, you know, you teaching at Duke.
Well, before he passed, he knew I was already at Duke. But I taught at Carolina for about 23 years.
Yeah. You would.
And my father, when my father did his PhD there, I was somewhere between 8 and 12 years of age. And so I became a Carolina fan as a child. And that is something that I have not been able to relinquish.
Wow! I'm telling you. The great sir. I'm trying to remember Mark Anthony Neal. You remember Mark Anthony Neal?
Yes, I know Mark.
He's very New York all the way, and I guess I don't know how close him and Bomani are, but I know they're close enough. But me being covering a lot of sports, I will tell you this, that despite being well versed in UNC, at least from the 1980s on, whatnot, but I'm a LeBron James partisan. So I'm sorry if Michael Jordan is your. I don't know if Michael Jordan is your overall basketball GOAT or greatest of all time. But,
no, you know, interestingly enough, and this is going to really sound obscure, my favorite basketball player of all time is not an ACC player.
Tell me Wilt Chamberlain.
No, this is going to throw you for a loop. It's Jamaal Wilkes.
Oh, get out of here, Jamaal Slick Wilkes.
Jamaal Slick Wilkes, the most efficient basketball player I ever saw. I loved his game. You know, he would never dunk, actually, but
yeah,
what a game he could play. It was just so smooth and efficient. I loved it.
I love this tangent that we're going into, because I was about to go into the whole boring, you know, biology, like history, because you have a tremendous, you know, collegiate history of professoring and stuff. But this is a great tangent because, you know, I talked with my cousin the other day, and, you know, how Jamaal Wilkes flashed in front of me again was, and this is with me being born after he retired, I think, because he retired, I think, before '87. But I mean, the guy really, because my father, loved played basketball at Arkansas, so he's 73, he's 72 now. So
Okay.
he's 70 going to be 72. So he's, obviously in the era, and he
Yeah.
Billy Paul, who played
No,
in
I remember when Jamaal Wilkes was called Keith Wilkes.
the
I'm old.
and like my father, he played with I don't know if you remember this player, Billy. You remember Billy Paul, this NBA player, Billy Paul?
Yes,
Well,
yes.
my father played in community college with him. He was in fact the backcourt mate of him, and in fact he was doing better than Billy Paul in practice. But unfortunately, he was a walk on, and Billy Paul's a scholarship, and that's how he just couldn't get it because my father was from McCoy, Arkansas. So he played, so he got this even back then, or especially back then. If you're from a small town in Arkansas, you're not Scottie Pippen like growing up, whatever, with video footage. Then you're, and even he, was obviously under recruited because of him being
Yeah,
in a small town. But that Jamaal Wilkes flashed my mind because I had to realize again how incredible that Los Angeles Lakers roster of the early 80s, because me and my cousin had this full debate because Magic Johnson, his greatest player of all time. And I'm so glad he said that. And because I knew he didn't consider Michael Jordan his favorite player, but he always felt that Jordan was slightly better than LeBron, and I always go out the back.
that's another, yeah.
But that Lakers roster, especially I think the 1980, I think the first year, either that Magic was there or the year before. Let me just go into it overall. I mean, that roster. I don't know. You seem like you were supportive of the Lakers in the early '80s.
Well, I had to some degree because Worthy was on that team.
Oh, Jay.
I
Oh,
always liked James Worthy's game. Yeah.
yeah. So for people to see overall, and they'll probably see back there, this I'll share the screen and whatnot, but this Lakers roster, this is the 81-82 roster with Jamaal Wilkes, and my goodness, I mean, Lord.
Yeah, that's a great team.
I mean,
Eddie Jordan,
whew.
McAdoo. Yeah, that's a great team.
Yeah, they call my father McAdoo because he resembled by McAdoo and played a little bit like him.
Like
Just way shorter though, because he wasn't 6'9". My father's like 5'8" or whatnot. So it would have been tough. But I mean, that team was impressive. And I mean, Jamaal Wilkes. I mean, gosh. I mean, Lord. I mean, when the worst player on the team is probably Kurt Rambis, and Kurt was pretty good too. I mean, you guys. I mean, that's when the days, I guess, and this before I was born, where I got to tell you now, it drives me nuts, like seeing how ESPN covers the NBA. TNT, I actually do like overall, but I feel ESPN overproduces too much rap songs being played, not a main theme song. Where I wonder if you're a person that's non-black, that's 45, or middle America, you're like, wow, they're playing a lot of songs that I don't know, that don't even play to the broadcast. And sometimes these players are not listening to. Sometimes they want to listen to R&B. Russell Westbrook listen to R&B. So, you let me ask you in terms like your role in terms of when you see athletes now, whether it's LeBron or others or whatnot, and they talk about how not only with voting, how they want to take more action just in terms of more than vote and everything. Have you had like any athlete, on campus at Duke or in your time at Chapel Hill that wanted to reach out about reparations, or you're able to teach any athlete or whatnot about this that's been prominent?
No, I don't think so. Actually, to the best of my knowledge, I've never had any of the basketball players in class, either at Duke or at UNC. I have had football players in, and disproportionately offensive linemen, because I always say with amusement that the offensive linemen tend to be the best students on football teams.
Yes, they do.
Not necessarily the most intelligent players, but they are the players who do best in the classroom. And one of them is Peter Henry, who was a Rhodes Scholar. He was a tight end, so he was an offensive lineman also. He was a Rhodes Scholar, he became eventually the dean of the Stern School at New York University.
Wow.
And I think he just stepped down from that position about a year ago. He's an economist also, absolutely brilliant guy. But he was on Carolina's football team as a tight end, and he took classes with me. So he's probably the most extraordinary student I ever had who was an athlete.
And is this him right here?
That is Peter Henry.
Wow, he's actually 50. I mean, he looks tremendous for 50. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
no. Peter's like, he's still got an athlete's body. He's crazy.
I mean, honestly, look, he should have been working for Obama. Honestly, he probably would influence him better or whatnot.
Well, I don't know.
Mm.
Peter's great. But yeah, I not had basketball players who came through my class, and I've not seen basketball players at either institution take a strong stand on many of these issues. I think the closest was when we had the controversy at UNC over the statue that was a memorial to the Confederate soldiers, so-called Silent Sam. Then at that moment, I think there was a significant number of athletes across the teams, both football and basketball, who were Black, who actually spoke out about the necessity of the removal of the statue. But that's somewhat unusual. But I think people forget that there have been athletes in the past who've taken very courageous stands. Hank Aaron,
Yeah.
extremely vocal about racism in the United States. And then, one of the most courageous stands, because it actually destroyed his career, long before Colin Kaepernick, was Curt Flood, who was actually responsible for the elimination of the reserve clause. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's something that I still feel, and I keep it really honest with a lot of my white sports media colleagues, that I still feel that there's been a clear sense of, and athletes have hinted about this throughout the years, but it's that whole, with sports being meritocracy, you would hope that you would have the best people in media, at least for sports, be in the positions, and that's obviously been one of the main examples of systematic racism overall, honestly, in terms of how this industry's been in regards to hiring, truly the best person for the job, and really being able to be there for it, and highlighting those issues of Kurt Floyd, highlighting Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, highlighting Craig Hodges, and really centering them, and instead of them just withering away, to the point where they deserve as much coverage, as anybody, like in general, before Colin Kaepernick, did what he had to do. So, yeah, it's just something that's fascinating. But, Professor Darity, I wanted to really ask you, in regards to, and this is why I truly do feel, and I'm glad that you're really getting, like, I'm not the only person interviewing you this week, and really getting in your deal whatnot. How do you feel about the state in terms of economists in this country, in terms of, besides Professor Hamilton, how you view in terms of colleagues in the industry, and of course a classy man overall, you're not gonna take any shots at anybody, but like, how do you feel in regards to like a quality person like Robert Reich, being, overall, or who's your friends in the industry, or I'm saying industry like it's like we're
Well, it is an industry of
yeah,
sorts.
it is actually. But who are your other friends, besides Professor Hamilton, that, truly you can have like a good conversation with, where it doesn't even have to be about the economic issues of our time?
So there's a number of people, and obviously Derek Hamilton's one of them, but I'm going to leave some people out, I'm sure. But one of my longtime collaborators is Samuel Myers Jr., who is a faculty member at the University of Minnesota, and is a very, very dear friend, and a very fine economist, and I think people would benefit greatly from looking at some of his work. Another is Rhonda Sharp, who heads an organization that goes by the acronym WISER,
Okay.
which is focused on women's economic health and well-being. And Rhonda and I have collaborated on a number of projects over the years. She's terrific and somebody who I can have very candid conversations with, and not have an expectation that something will be revealed to the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
There's also Dania Frank Francis. There's Gregory Price. There's a sociologist named Alan Naha, who's a very, very close friend, and an epidemiologist named Arjaman Siddiqui, who I've worked with and also am close friends with. I mean, there's a number of people. If you look at our book, there's a section where we offer gratitude to folks, and there's a host of folks who are economists who are listed there, who've either worked with me or worked with me on other initiatives besides our research projects, and who have been strong friends over the years. And so yeah, the profession is a profession that has had a tendency to degrade Black economists and to downgrade Black economists, but there's a number of us who are present, and we tend to, for the most part, have good friendships. You used the term Uncle Tom a little earlier.
Mm-hmm.
We have some Black economists who I would put in that category.
Yes.
I'm not going to name names at the moment, but I have some folks who I have talked about quite critically in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But the folks that I'm talking about, I think, are folks who are genuinely righteous, and I love being friends with them. And all the folks in the gratitude section are not necessarily Black. There are collaborators, friends who I have who are not Black. What I will say, though, and I think this is important, I think most of the economists with whom I have very close relationships, whether Black or white, are not at the top 5 economics departments.
Mm.
Yeah. The way in which, what I've found to be very exciting about their work is not something that's treated as exciting by the folks who are the most powerful gatekeepers in the profession.
So would that be, is there anyone, whether at Harvard or Yale or, University of Chicago, like, do you feel that there's enough people, well, definitely not enough, obviously, but, or Stanford or Berkeley or any of the other ones, or University of Pennsylvania, or do you feel that there's at least some people in there that are truly trying to fight the good fight, even if they're not Black, that they're able to say, you know what, we need to really be more professors of economics that truly favor working class people, the proletariat, that's truly about public policy and not just trying to say, oh, let's speak at Bank of America or Citigroup's next function?
So there's a small number of these individuals, and they're scattered across these topmost institutions, but it's a very small number. And I think that the present moment has given them and others a greater opportunity to talk about what's wrong with the economics profession, particularly with respect to how white supremacy is manifest in the economics profession. But that's very, very particular to this moment. And I'm not sure how sustained this kind of attention will be given to the question of how the economics profession excludes certain types of researchers and certain types of research. So we'll have to see what develops, but in terms of these most elite departments, no, there are very, very few people who are inclined in the direction that you're talking about.
because the only three, really, in terms of white or professors or economists that I really do respect in terms of American, you know, in terms of a way where I would want to interview them, and Paul Krugman is not one of them. Is with Dean Baker a little bit, but there's still things with Dean where he's probably still kind of, not as pro-black as he needs to be on issues, considering that he's still kind of white centric on it. And then two that I think really do the best job or do as best as they can. Even though I would love for them to really talk to you more. I think that would be a great thing. Or Professor Hamilton, both of y'all in general, and the ones that you mentioned in terms of your friends. I mentioned Robert Reich a little bit, where even though he worked for Clinton, but he was trying to really push, and he got weeded out because he was being a little too left for their liking and everything. And then he was very prominently supporting Bernie Sanders, but again, he needed to be where you're at on reparations, honestly. And Joseph Stiglitz, who even though he's at Columbia, whatnot, it's like people keep a distance away from him because he does have these very real moments with people, and he's like, sometimes he's very.
I was at a conference that the Federal Reserve Board had where Joe Stiglitz gave a keynote address,
mm-hmm.
and essentially lacerated the Federal Reserve. It was terrific. But yes, Joe will speak his mind, and he will speak his mind quite aggressively.
Yes.
So yeah, there are people who don't like Joe for that very reason. But I'm a fan also. Although again, on the question of race, once again, there's a certain degree of I don't know. There's a certain degree of absence in the analysis that he offers. But we both are fellows with the Roosevelt Institute, and he's the person I think who was responsible for crafting this phrase, the hidden rules, to describe how the economy really operates, and that was transferred to the title of a book that the Cambridge University Press brought out that was edited by some of the Roosevelt Institute staffers, called "The Hidden Rules of Race," which I think is a very, very it's a valuable volume that people may want to look at. But yeah, I would say out of all of the economists who've received the Nobel Prize, Joe Stiglitz is one of the most important and valuable. But the other person I would highlight is Amartya Sen, who is both economist and philosopher supreme, and has just been somebody who's made wonderful contributions to the way in which we think about human well-being. And I'll also add, I spent a very undistinguished year at the London School of Economics after I'd finished graduate school.
Yeah, who mentioned that?
And Amartya Sen was on the faculty there, and he actually called me in for a conversation. I have no idea how he identified me, and asked me if I would share whatever I had written with him. And I did that. He gave me back copious comments, and so I've known him ever since then, and just really, really admire him greatly.
I mean, any last time you talked to him or whatnot, or probably been like a while?
It's been a while. It's been a while since I've talked to him last. Yeah. But,
that's a real person that could be like a real ally or whatnot, because it's something where, especially sometimes over in London, despite a lot of issues that they have in regards to their own, like systematic, pro-like, anti-black thing that's been forever a thing, the staple of their whole entire existence. But it's something where they still have that whole more egalitarian or that equal level in terms of like public systems, or just that base level thing where
they have a more egalitarian system of public support, but I'm not sure they necessarily have
Yeah,
particularly their academics. I'm not sure their academics
yeah,
have a more egalitarian outlook. Now,
yeah.
there is much more space in the British academic system for folks who are on the left.
Mm-hmm.
There's much more space there,
Yeah.
uh, but but I'm not sure that even folks on the left are less hierarchical in some sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, you
That,
know how that is.
yeah. They're not jumping for Jeremy Corbyn, it seems like, or whatnot, or, with that. And I want to talk to you about that in terms of global politics, where I just got two more questions to let you go because, uploading this will take a whole, time and whatnot on the laptop because it's so great. Um, about when we mentioned about Britain, and then we're mentioning because we can obviously talk about how disastrous they've been in terms of the Tories in any conservative government, whether Brazil, Bolsonaro, and all that. But
Yeah, I mean, there's a world of fascists. It's
yeah,
really really
yeah.
if it wasn't so horrendous, you might actually laugh, but it's beyond laughter.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's just here. It's just so much so when you have a reality TV show clown representing that level of like fascism. It's just something that you would hope that people in this moment would understand that at least we should just have the debate between centrism and I call it rationalism in terms of left because I just feel that that's a way better term to use overall. And I just like using centrism than neoliberal, where I'll be like Professor West, like, I need you to, like, no more neoliberal, like, say centrism, say centrist, like, it's like right there, their right status quo in the middle, whether it's Obama or John Roberts or Obama's puppet Biden, or, or potentially, as I said, because they gave Amy Klobuchar, they were giving Amy Klobuchar the job to be Biden's VP. Like if he passed Bernie and the delegates, they gave her the job after Obama made the centrist coalition calls. Or after Biden finally won a state in his presidential running career, he wins a state, he wins South Carolina.
Carolina, yeah,
That's fine. So I was like, okay, it's
changes
fine.
everything.
He wins South Carolina. Bernie does way better than what he did 4 years ago against Hillary, and he should still have a significant lead on Super Tuesday. He's got California in the bag. He's leading Texas. He may win Massachusetts over Warren, get her out the race. He may win Minnesota over Klobuchar, who's, she should win that state. And Biden is clearly second or third solidly going into those states, and then all of a sudden, he gets $100 million in free media, from CNN and MSNBC and local media throughout Texas or Virginia. And, it's something where Obama talked, and this is documented, people, I'm not making this up. This literally was reported on New York Times when they were going over Selma, this all in terms of the bridge, this literally happened in terms of Obama making the calls where he literally did this in front of everyone's face if they wanted to know. And, got Buttigieg and Klobuchar at the race and, gave Buttigieg the promise that he could host Jimmy Kimmel or whatnot, or Bob Iger. That's how it happened because people was wondering how is Buttigieg hosting Jimmy Kimmel, on night or whatever. Like, when did that happen? And, and they did that to try to get him popular with my age group because we all already see what Buttigieg is, the McKinsey, Harvard, guy who's not like his great father, who was a really like beloved professor at South Bend before he passed away, right when Buttigieg started his campaign in 2019. So or last year. But yeah, like, you had Klobuchar given the promise where Obama and Biden and her are friends, lockstep centrists all the way. And, despite her only winning 7 delegates, they thought that she was wonderfully suited to be a bootleg Hillary VP option, and she spilled the beans on it. She gave the gift. Like, the day before Super Tuesday on that Monday, and I'll show you the link, like, she literally spilled the beans on it, said that she's honored to be part of this ticket, and then she said of helping Joe Biden become the nominee. And it's like, well, this is the Amy Klobuchar that can be careless like that. And I honestly think Obama and Biden were mad, and Al Sharpton and a lot of prominent Black women Democrats were upset. And they just said, you need to take a serious look of these other Black women candidates and debate. Before I ask the final question for you, Professor Darity, the only one-on-one debate that Bernie and Biden had, as I mentioned, I did advise the campaign. I was trying to tell the campaign, just only through emails, not even phone calls, through emails, because I talked to Nina Turner and Faz Shakur, and I told them that, just maybe make sure you emphasize how Bernie actually has a 100% record on Planned Parenthood and NARAL, and certainly Obama's VP doesn't have that, considering him always wanting to do the politically expedient thing or politically thing that he sees that polls well. This Joe Biden, and he definitely went and said that fully in the debate in terms of going at him for that, while trying to say Joe is my friend, and all that, to try to not get used in a Republican ad against Biden just in case. So Bernie played this as well as he could in terms of where his only mistakes was not reaching out to you directly and maybe talking to more progressive media outlets and not centrist media like New York Times and Washington Post, who really were against him, obviously. But it was something where Klobuchar was promised that, and now I feel that Stacey Abrams has long been the favorite, in terms of being VP, because unlike with Kamala Harris and Val Demings, like Stacey Abrams is really incredible story. Like, she, Mississippi.
I kind of think that Keisha Lance Bottoms is the sneak.
You think she's sneaking up? You think
she's the sneak attack? She's the sneak attack.
Well, but seeing her, Muriel Bowser, I thought that, but who's really the dark horse now, because I kept on saying it on Twitter that Stacey Abrams now's got it after Amy Klobuchar imploded, and then that's before George Floyd, when she really just imploded and was like basically tearing on air because Rachel Maddow and Andrea Mitchell were trying to push their friend Amy Klobuchar into being the VP, only for that to blow up. The one I will say, because Amy Klobuchar kind of spilled the beans again when she said she was removing her name from any consideration, was when she said she didn't say Black women. She said person of color, and they probably were very Obama and things that it's really not Joe Biden to me that's picking his VP, because he's really just a puppet overall, for billionaire class and peoples, and I still think the election's already over where he's gonna be president. Obviously, because people are just fearful.
So from your perspective, Obama gave us Trump, and now he's going to give us Biden?
Well, I think he would just,
because I think Obama's presidency created the conditions for Trump to get elected.
Well, definitely. And I just think Hillary overall. Well, it's just the fact that they were so striding their centrism that they just thought that, my presidency is good. Democrats have this overall. Who would think about voting for a reality TV show clown where we don't even need to think about fixing the electoral college, because they know how corrupt that system is, where, it's the only major democracy election in the world where you do not have the most, where you have the most votes, you don't necessarily win, and it's so corrupt. And you would think that Hillary would be like, okay, we need to get rid of this now.
But, obviously, if you had a different set of rules, if it was just an outright majority that won, and I'm not saying this is something to complain about. I'm just saying it would alter the way in which campaigns were conducted.
Yeah.
There are certain states where people would never appear because there's no point in going to really low vote states, right?
Yeah.
So, Texas, New York, some of the major southern states, California would be where all of the contestation would be taking place, because those are such vital states. Maybe Illinois and Ohio as well. But people would never go to the Dakotas or to the upper New England states. Why bother? Right?
Well, I had the best solution that I thought of, because I had not seen any white person, any other non-Black person say it, and I probably may have some white person steal it from me or whatnot. But I said this on Twitter. I said the best solution that I could think of, because it's hard to have any perfect solution for anything. But the best solution for me was, you can keep the electoral college, but you give the person who wins the popular vote an additional 25 electoral college votes. And
Interesting.
yeah, I really just think that should have been like always the case to avoid situations like this, especially since 2000, when Gore let Bush steal the election, and
Right.
I still believe that to this day, and it's really so sad how that in itself was such a monumental moment in history that then all of a sudden 10 months later, 9 months later, 9/11 happens, and it's like, well, we forgot that Bush stole the election, really, you
Right.
know.
Right.
And Republicans stole the election, and John Roberts stole the election. So it's just something where this is, and that's one of my things of real racial solidarity to get. One of my main points is really admitting how the presidential election is decided in terms of really saying, all right, you want to have these states matter where the person in Ohio's vote matters 3 times more than the person in California's vote, or the person in Wyoming and Wyoming's vote matters 9 times more, because you want to keep your ridiculous Senate. And I'm all about abolishing the Senate, by the way. I really am. It should have never been. But these are the things that I had to learn. Not in high school, and this is me going to great high school, even in college or whatnot. You don't really get the whole, unless you really dive deep into a specific class about why the Senate was formed and how it's a compromise. And it's something that, is so banked into our system that no one's even thinking about discussing that or thinking about just having cameras in the Supreme Court, which
So many of these compromises also are linked directly to preservation of the system of slavery.
Yeah.
Especially the design of the Electoral College.
Yeah. Professor, the only last question I got for you, because I know you gotta go, and I gotta go overall. Where it's something. It's the perfect question. I just thought about it again just now, and it's gonna be so funny when I'm able to clip this overall. What was your favorite Bomani Jones moment, if you can remember, of him being your student?
Oh, a Bomani Jones moment when he was one of my students.
Because he certainly has a lot of he certainly had some tendencies of not being consistently the best student sometimes.
No, and I know he'll say that, but he also was somebody who would think outside the box, which I really, really appreciated. I think it's probably in the context of a classroom setting. It's when he got really exercised about the fact that in much of economic analysis, there's a tendency to say that competitive markets will eliminate discrimination, and Bomani was he basically was saying that's ridiculous. yeah.
That is a tremendous moment overall. All I can say is that how he probably talked to you about, because he's loyal to North Carolina. Well, he's from everywhere in the South. Whether it's Austin, Raleigh, Atlanta. I mean, that brother is from everywhere in the South. But it's Clark University and then Raleigh. I forgot Raleigh because he probably was listening to him when he was in Raleigh on the radio.
Yo show, right.
Yeah,
right. When the folks would call in and say, "Hey, Bomani."
Professor Darity, I think it was just meant to be, Lord willing, that's the perfect way that we end this great talk.
Great.
Great, sir. I hope this is the first of many more, whatnot, especially some things in terms of media works going in terms of the show on my end for certain things. But really do appreciate you. It's been tremendous. Been a real blessing, and great to have this moment. Great to talk to you today.
Thank you, Andrew, so much. Take care.
Yep, appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Yep. That was tremendous, folks. Stay tuned. More coming up on the Home Delivery, folks. Peace out.